you're here for our Collaborator presentation today about Collaborator 13. Don't be superstitious about upgrading. We've got a lot to talk about today. It's going to be a jam-packed hour, a lot of new features to talk about. And so I'm Mel Gage. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a solutions engineer supporting Collaborator here at SmartBear. It is my primary product, and I think we have a great product and a lot of new features to show you today. And joining me today is Jonathan Fortunati.
Hello, everybody. Manage a team of solutions engineers at SmartBear. Used to be the Collaborator guy. Now I kind of work on some other products, but still work with Collaborator when Mel takes vacation and things like that.
So just a little bit about SmartBear. We are a global company. We have a great product suite that spans all of your development needs. We have everything from design, creation, where we're going to be focused today on Collaborator, to our test products, and then onto our monitoring product as well. So if you're looking to build out your suite of tools for your organization, we likely have the tools you need to be successful with your software design. So today's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the Collaborator infrastructure. I like to bring this up because I know that when I demonstrate to you folks on the phone, we usually focus in on one particular aspect of Collaborator where we're talking about a particular solution, a particular integration. And so I like to take this time to show how much wider and deeper Collaborator can take your process workflows. Then we're going to talk about the updates to Collaborator. We're going to start with version 11, what we've done from version 11, step through 12, and then wrap up with the latest release of version 13. And then we're going to walk through a new features demonstration. Basically, that's going to be a workflow coming out of Azure DevOps. We chose that one. It's our latest repository integration. And we're going to demonstrate out of that. And once we get into Collaborator, we're going to start pointing out a lot of these new functions and these new features that we've brought to the table. And then finally, that Q&A session. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a quick poll. First question today is, what version of Collaborator are you currently using? We'll let that run for a couple minutes. See who needs to update. Oh, great. See a lot of folks on version 11 and even a few on version 10 or earlier. So while that runs, we can go ahead and get started on our infrastructure. So Collaborator is a very customizable tool, very flexible tool. It can be dropped into your workflow processes in many, many different ways. And like I said, we normally demonstrate one, maybe two of these different integrations when we're doing our tailored demonstrations for you folks on the phone. But what I like to show is we do have our webhooks integrations through Bitbucket. We're going to demonstrate through Azure DevOps, our latest one today. We have our issue tracking with bidirectional communications out to Jira. So you can manage issues directly in and out of Collaborator. And we're also going to demonstrate the new Collaborator plugin for Jira today, show you how that works. We also have, and this is not an inclusive list, several different standalone repository systems that we manage incoming requests for reviews through our enterprise client GUI. A very powerful standalone tool as well that communicates back into Collaborator to generate your reviews out of those repository systems. But then the big thing that I think a lot of folks miss out on are these top three items. We have a very powerful command line integration suite, as well as triggers built into Collaborator that at various stages through your review process, you can trigger these external things like scripts and Jenkins and custom integrations. And you can also use our fully published JSON API to do much of the same thing. So you can use Collaborator as a central hub in your review process and your workflows. You can even use these triggers in the CLI and the APIs to bring Collaborator into your workflows, maybe from other processes, such as your Git and Subversion webhooks or Perforce hooks, and write those scripts to generate your reviews and grab data out of the database for your reporting. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and I think there are so many agencies out there that can really take advantage of what Collaborator can bring. All right, we're gonna go ahead and end our poll. Looks like we came in, version 11 is our winner today. Almost 50% of you are on version 11. We'll talk a little bit about the upgrade process. It's well documented in our documentation, but I'm going to touch on a couple caveats and things that you may want to be aware of before you start your upgrade process, just to ensure that things go smoothly. And I see that one of you out there is not using Collaborator. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you get the information you need to make the decision to take us on as one of your process tools. So with that, let's get into the updates. We'll start with version 11. So in Collaborator 11, so for those of you that are on 10 or earlier, we're going to make use of those remote systems link. Those are going to be those webhook integrations that we just saw on the previous slide that really streamline your processes using push and pull request functionality to generate your reviews in Collaborator directly out of those systems. Template subscriptions and review subscriptions. There's also file subscriptions as well, and new functionality added to even further streamline your processes, allowing reviewers to be assigned automatically when certain criteria are met on your incoming review requests. Content cache cleanup. This has been a huge lifesaver for some of our organizations that have been using Collaborator for 10 plus years. The content cache is on the server itself, and it's where we store all of the information associated with the review materials. Your other information is stored out in the SQL database, but we keep the review materials on the server itself. And those files, especially if you're doing document review, can get large quickly. And so having that ability to clean up that content cache, archive that information off so you can pull it back up later, is a huge win for those organizations that needed it. Copy review, that lets you complete a review and then make a copy of it if you we're going to use it for maybe another team. And then very important, our Jira integration. I touched on that on our infrastructure slide, and we're going to show you today how that works. And then custom syntax highlighting. When you're bringing in your code for review, you can create your own syntax highlighting around that code structure and save that in your server so you always have that available based on your code files. And I'm also going to start with these just scratch the tip of the iceberg. If you go out and look at our documentation on the support site, you can get a full list of everything that we've done with every release. Like I said, this barely scratches the surface on all the bug fixes that we've put in, and even additional features that we're not listing here. We're highlighting the ones that are really important and make things a lot more smooth for the Collaborator process.
I'm sure a lot of you know our backlog is very driven by customer feedback. So there's to that point, Mel, there's a lot of little tweaks that come from various customers that just help with the usability of the tool.
Exactly. And if there is something about Collaborator that you get under the hood, you start playing with it and introducing it in your workflow, something that you see that you might think we could improve on, we're happy to take those feature requests too directly on our website. You can drop that into the development team, and we do take those into consideration when we're planning our sprints for development. Version 12 brought that Azure DevOps integration that we're going to go through today. We've improved document review performance. That's been a focus for our development team. A lot of organizations have started adopting Collaborator for their document review process, and we understand how important that is, and we've really put a lot of focus into improving that performance. We've added GitLab group sync and GitHub build status so you get more information between those two implementations and the Collaborator server. So you can actually sync your GitLab security groups directly into the Collaborator server and manage your reviews and your assignments through those groups as well. Atlassian Crowd single sign-on, we've added that, as well as open JDK support and rich text functionality in our comment fields and our chat fields. And finally, in Collaborator 13, which has been out now for about 5 or 6 weeks, we have added the often requested multiple checklists per review. So prior to 13, you could only assign one checklist per review template. And we know that that has been a little bit of a limiting factor on some workflows that use multiple teams, and they have individual checklists for those teams. So we've introduced the multiple checklists. We're going to see that today. Select all items for checklists. It's kind of ironic. We just launched that feature, and I just got a request the other day. It's like, is there someplace I can turn that off? And so our dev team's like, oh, sure, we can always set something. We enable something, and somebody's going to want to be able to turn it off. So that's currently in consideration as well. And then these next ones, parallel conversion of files, conversion on demand, those are associated with document review, and we're going to see how that works. The conversion on demand has been a big sticking point for a lot of organizations. What we're going to see is when we bring documents into Collaborator for review, Collaborator actually generates a rendering of those documents for the diff viewer. And that process has been a little lackluster up to now. And once we bring documents in, we're going to see some new indicators showing those document conversions going on. And we're going to see how we can jump right into those documents and begin review, even though Collaborator is still doing the process work on the back end. That's part of that performance speed up. And then we've also got the new approved by workflow state. This can help with all of those reviews you see stacking up in your action items by reviewers or roles that are optional roles. And it tags them as an approved by workflow. So if you've completed a review, but maybe your observer or your moderator never logged in to actually look at the review, this is how they're going to get tagged. Approved by workflow just means that they were assigned to the review, but never really took part in the review. So when you're looking at those documents or those historical records, you say, yeah, John was attached, but he was an optional role, and it was just approved by workflow. And then one that's not on the list for 13 that I didn't even know I needed until I was working up this review, these slides yesterday. We've actually started pulling in branch information in our pull requests, and we're going to see that with the Azure DevOps. It's going to pull in and show you directly in your review your source and your destination branches during your pull requests, and you'll have links out to those branches populated right in your review. So very cool functionality. And then last but not least, security updates to the Tomcat server. 12.3, 12.5, we did some performance enhancements and updates to our Tomcat server that Collaborator is based on. And in today's digital world, it's never a bad idea to upgrade when security and performance are in question. All right. With that, let's go to our second poll question. What is your primary use for Collaborator? You're doing code review, you're doing document review, or you're doing a little bit of both? All right, and we'll let that run. And if you do have questions, please feel free to post those in the Q&A.
That'll be my job. I'll answer those.
Yeah, we got to give John something to do.
Right. We can't just sit here.
So we're going to highlight these new features. The repository integration with Azure DevOps. We included work items. I'm not going to show that one today, but if you do currently use Azure DevOps as your work item tracking, it does integrate into Collaborator as well as Azure DevOps repos. We're certainly going to see those multiple checklists. We're going to show off that Jira integration for those of you that are on 10 and older and haven't seen that yet. We're going to look at document uploading performance improvements, and then we're going to look lastly at that Collaborator plugin for Jira. John, you got a question?
Nope. Look at that. I'm slacking on my one job. Yes, we will have a recording that we can provide to others.
All right. So without further,
yeah.
And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, or if you know, these recordings are going to be stored up in the cloud. So if you get a link for this recording, those are good up in Zoom's cloud for about a year. It's a sliding window. So if you want to go back and look at this webinar in a year, with that link, you'll have the option to actually download the recording. I would recommend you do that if you want to archive it and have that available for people coming in the future. So without further ado, we'll jump into our features demonstration. And I'm going to move to my Azure DevOps repos. And so what we're going to do today is I'm going to make some changes here in one of my repos. We're going to use a commit to commit to this particular branch, and then we're going to do a pull request, which is what's going to kick off our review in Collaborator. Once that's done, we'll step into Collaborator, go through the review process, look at some of these new features, and then show you how Collaborator ties back out to Azure DevOps to help you manage your repository structures and what happens on your pull requests when your reviews are complete. So I'm going to launch one more polling question. What is your primary integration? This is one that I'm always curious about because we're always talking specifically about one type or the other, and I'm just curious to see where most folks are going. All right, so we're going to just do a quick edit. Normal workflow, we'd have this checked out on a local system and maybe use a Git interface and move items back and forth, but so many of these new repo systems are very powerful and let you edit directly here in those systems. So I've checked out in my dev1 patch branch, and we're just going to make a quick code change. So we'll just call this change 1. And we'll commit it. So we're going to commit it directly to this branch. Ask me for some comments. I'm just going to go ahead and do that commit. And now what we want to do is create that pull request. And it's this pull request that's going to set off that webhooks trigger, reach out to Collaborator with all this information, and generate our review for us. So I'll create a pull request. We're going to give it a title. And I'm going to demonstrate here part of the integration with Jira. I know that a lot of agencies that I've talked to, they typically start in Jira, then they do their code work, and then they want their reviews. And sometimes that information may not flow as easily as they'd like. So what they can do with the integration to Collaborator and Jira, we can actually tag our project number and our ticket right here with a regex expression that when it hits Collaborator, it's going to take that, recognize it for a link out to Jira, and generate all that information for us. So we'll take a look at that. I'm just going to drop that in here as well. We want to bounce this against my development branch, not my master branch. And then we're going to create our pull request. And this trigger is reaching out to Collaborator, and you'll also see Collaborator acts as a gate for me here in Azure. So we can use Collaborator as a status check here in Azure to keep me from merging code until my review is complete. So it's another tool in your arsenal to ensure that you're getting fully reviewed code into your master repositories. We'll also see that it populates with my response from Collaborator saying that the review has been created and actually provides me a link to that review. So we'll select this link, take us directly into Collaborator, and I begin my review process. So here in Collaborator, we start our reviews in the planning phase. And this is where I'd mentioned those subscriptions, those new functionalities. You could streamline this phase even more by assigning reviewers automatically based on things as authorship. So for example, this was created by me. It assigned me in the author role. So based on my authorship, I could have already assigned my pool of reviewers and had this review moving forward without ever even having to log into Collaborator. So it just makes your process that much more frictionless. John, you're up.
Yep.
So we'll start here in the planning phase, and we're going to use the annotation phase today because I want to demonstrate how our review pools work as well. Typically, the annotation phase is an optional phase, but we can use it as a stopgap measure to assign to a pool, or if we wanted to do maybe a pre-review where we've got some requirements documents we want to look at before we push the review on into the inspection phase. Then we'll move into the inspection phase and go through an inspection rework cycle before finally wrapping up and completing our review. I mentioned that regex expression coming across into my review directly out of Azure. And it's also populated here in my overview statement. And we're not seeing the link just yet because we're still in our editing mode, but once we've done editing and we want to go ahead and send this to the annotate, we'll see that these hyperlinks will resolve, and we're also going to see it in our remote system links in a little bit.
You know, Mel, mind if I jump in?
Sure, go ahead.
I think actually, maybe bring this question to you, since I haven't been playing with the new releases as much as you have, and that's on the pull request and assigning reviewers. I know, like we just talked about, if you have subscriptions set up, that's a great way to assign reviewers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with Bitbucket Server, that will also pull in reviewers from the pull request. Do you know if any of the other releases have updated to include other pull request systems? Or
I know that I believe that GitLab has and GitHub has as well. So you can enter those reviewers. I have not tested this with Azure DevOps. And as I mentioned, there are so many updates. Even for those of us working on it every day, it's hard to keep up with all the new functionality. It's something I would have to test with Azure, but I do know it's supported. Like I said, we've done GitLab group syncs. The big thing is that you're going to need to make sure that your users are mapped between the two systems if you want to do those assignments. So if you do have users out in Collaborator and users in the other systems, you can ensure that they're mapped properly. And like I said, I believe in GitLab, GitHub, and Bitbucket, you can do assignments. I would have to test Azure DevOps. So one of the aspects of Collaborator is our template. It's what controls what goes on in your review. We're using a default template here, but I want to show you those new checklists. So we're going to switch to a template that I've recently put together just to be able to show you these new checklist functionalities. So for those of you that have seen checklists in the past, you're used to having that one column. Well, what we're going to see now is additional functionality in the title bar. And we've got a checklist here that is assigned as our default. In the template setup, when you're creating your new templates now, in the checklist field, you'll be able to select all the checklists you want to associate to a particular template. You can select which checklists are mandatory or optional, just as you could previously. And then you can select one of those checklists to be your default, or the one that's going to show up here when you start your reviews. The other checklists will be optional, and you can add those from the drop-down list. So in this case, I have an additional 5 checklists that I could add. It's simply a matter of selecting one of those checklists, adding that checklist, and now we'll see a new tab that shows that particular checklist. So if you're building out checklists for each one of your teams, it's simply a matter of adding that to your template and adding those checklists to the reviews as needed. You're going to see some more information on the tabs. An asterisk represents a mandatory checklist. We also see our count of items and the number of items that have been complete. So if I go ahead and sign off on this one, we're going to see that count increase. We'll also see the usual user name and date timestamp of when that item was complete. And then in addition, your custom fields that are assigned to your checklist items, if those are made mandatory, you will also notice that your text on your tab will be red, much like what we see here because we need a reviewer still. Items that have to be completed will be highlighted in red. So you'll see on your tabs that red text indicating that there's items that need to be completed on that checklist. If we wanted to add some others, we could certainly do that. We'll add an example checklist. And each checklist maintains its own set of custom fields. So for example, here in this first checklist, we have a yes/no field. My code review has no additional custom fields, and my example checklist just has a set of notes fields that we can leave some comments in. This is a mandatory checklist, so to get through our process, we're going to go ahead and mark these off. And to show you that other feature that we mentioned, we added the select all does not show up in the editing option, so we're currently editing. If we are done editing, we're going to see that select all button available there next to the status, and we can just click that and select all of our checklist items. I can certainly understand why you might want to be able to disable that just to ensure that everything is being looked at with due diligence. However, you do get your date and timestamps, so you can quickly see if something may have been glossed over. So moving on, we'll go ahead and make some participant assignments. I'm going to assign my team in the reviewer role. And what we're going to see here is my team gets assigned. They're assigned as a review pool. So no particular individual from that team has been assigned. So what will happen now when we move into the annotate phase, those folks will get in an email, and I'll show you what that looks like on the reviewer side. We could add participant custom fields if we want to, and then in our remote system links, we're going to see that automatic link to Jira that was created because I put in that Jira project. We can use this link to go directly out to Jira. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more depth closer to the end of the presentation so we can have a little bit more discussion around that. We're also going to see a link back out to my Azure DevOps, my pull request, and then a new feature that I mentioned that I didn't know I needed. I can see clearly which branches I'm working on. My Dev1 patch branch, merging into my Dev1. So it gives you reviewers that quick, easy information without having to go anywhere else to find it. So I don't have to go back out to my pull request to understand, wait, where am I merging? Where am I developing? It's all right here. Our chat window updates with all the same information. We're going to see those links. We'll even see updates on what's been done in the checklists. We can leave comments and have discussions around the review as a whole here in the chat. I mentioned the markdown language. That's been a new feature, so you can actually come in and do bolds and italics and any HTML markup language you want to put in these comments. If you want to make your text red or green or whatever the XML is going to let you do, you can do that markup language directly here in the chat fields. And then we see our changes from Azure with our commit hash. At this point, I want to demonstrate some of the performance improvements we've done with our documents. So I'm going to upload a large document manually. And I don't have a larger document than the Collaborator User's Manual. It's about 18 megs. It's just a little over 1,100 pages. So we're going to upload this guy.
Great bedtime reading material.
Indeed. So our upload is complete, and now our server is rendering it. So we've got this new status bar that shows what's in process for our document renders. And this is an extremely large file, so it's going to take some time to generate that render. But what we've done is allowed users to go into this document directly. We'll see a status of where we are in this particular document. So we're currently converting page 34 of 1182. If we want to go to a particular page, say we know that my changes are on page 1000. Now, previously we'd have to sit here and wait for this entire document to render out to page 1000 before we could go out and take a look at that. But that new conversion on demand, if I put in the page number I want to see, it's going to take me directly out to that page and render it for me so I can start my review without having to wait for the entire document to render. So that's pretty cool.
I know, I think it was about 50% of the people in the audience are using this for doc review and code. So that's hopefully something that, a pain that all of you may have fixed now.
And we also do the parallel processing. Had I uploaded 2 or 3 different documents, we would see all of those processing at the same time rather than doing that serial queue, loading them up one at a time. So you get a much, much faster conversion rate. We've also done some improvements on the backend engine that does this, and we've seen huge improvements up to cutting things down by more than 50% in the time it takes to actually render these documents.
I know, Mel, that some of the discussions on making these changes happened before you started, and I remember being in the room with some of the devs and for those who have been on Collaborator for a while, Rick and Justin, and trying to figure out what the best way to do this was. Really cool to see that this has evolved over time, and actually they've been able to deliver what they wanted to and planned on doing in that meeting, probably a year and a half ago now, 2 years ago.
Cool, that is cool. So we've gone through our planning phase. We have our materials assigned from Azure. We've uploaded a document, and we'll touch on both of these in the review process with our reviewer. We also have our quick matrix that shows what's been changed in a particular file, as well as status indicators. So once we make some changes, we're going to see these numbers change and see those statuses update. So those of you that have been using Collaborator and maybe not using those pool assignments that we've made here are used to seeing this move to the inspection phase. Well, we'll see this is because I've assigned a review pool. My option here is to move to the annotate phase. So when I do this, it's going to send out that email to everyone in this pool. My template requires one user to log in and take that review. So what we're going to do is move over to Patrick's account, and we'll see, we should see, maybe it's timed out because I haven't been into it. Yeah, exactly. There we go. There we go. So now we're going to see all of Patrick's work. Another new feature we have added as well is here on the home page with these header bars. We can now sort, much like you can in a lot of applications, based on these different header titles. So if you quickly want to see what you've got in work, what's coming up on your deadline, you can sort and quickly see maybe what's past due, what's coming up, and take action on those items that you need to. We're going to sort by review number here and see that latest review that Patrick has just received. Select this and go into this review. We're going to see all of the information that's been populated by my author. And again, a lot of this can be automated with those subscriptions based on templates, authors, or even file types and file names. And so in order for Patrick to take this review, he's got an option right here to pick up this review. And when we do so, it's going to assign him in that reviewer role, meet my requirement for actually that second reviewer. It will move us out of that annotation phase and directly into my inspection phase. We'll see all of our information that's been populated, and we can get to the meat of our review. So coming into our file, we're going to see some changes here. This was a highlighted change. And the reason we're highlighted in yellow here is this was a blank line, and we didn't add a new line. We just altered that blank line from the previous commit. So we'll see that highlighted in yellow. Our diff viewer gives you an overall chat window that applies to this particular file, so you can make comments, have discussions around a particular file. Our internal development team uses this particular pane in their process to just highlight where things may have changed. You know, if you're looking at a file that's 2,000 lines of code, you may just say, look at line 1,000 to 1,100. That's where we made our changes. Our diff viewer is going to show you that, but you may want to put those comments in there, maybe a little additional information as to why those lines were changed and what they should be looking for. We can add that as a comment. And with the review itself, we can select lines within the file and start a conversation at that line, add those comments. We'll see our chat bubble pop up here in our diff viewer. And if we see something that needs addressing, for example, my variable here is missing an R. We can select that line, again, start that conversation, and enter a defect. We get a pop-up window that gives us our defect classifications, and these are completely customizable. So if you are building out metrics, monitoring your processes and workflows and need to capture that data to understand where you may be seeing your defects, customize these, capture that information as you need it. So we'll select the value, we'll call this a major, and we'll add that review defect. We'll see that date and time stamped by Patrick. We'll see the red bug on our diff viewer, and red bugs will keep our review from progressing to a completed state. So even if you have other reviewers associated with a review and Collaborator operates in near real time, you could have 3, 4, 5 reviewers working on the same review at the same time. You're going to see all of this information updating in near real time, so you're not going to be stepping on each other's toes. And in today's distributed environment, a platform like Collaborator is absolutely necessary to get your code reviews and document reviews done. We can add some external comments. If we want to send an item out to Jira, maybe track it for changes, but it's not going to hold up our code, we can add that as an external link. I'm going to add this as a defect here. I'm going to show you how to convert it to an external link as my author, because Patrick's account is not tied into Jira. So we're just going to say unstack these. We're going to add that as a defect. This will also demonstrate how we can use this as a conversation. So we're going to add this as a defect. We'll get that red bug, and we're done with this particular piece of review material. We're still working on our conversion. Again, a huge, huge file. So, but we can come in and we can start our review just to demonstrate a little bit of what document review looks like. And we support a whole host of file types, from document, all the Office suite, like PowerPoint, Excel. We support PDFs, Visio diagrams, JPEGs, image formats, and you can even use HTML URLs to pull in web content off your web servers and review that as a standalone web page as well. The difference is in document review, we use a pushpin functionality. So for example, if we wanted to change this header, we can simply click on our document, drop in a pushpin, and begin a conversation at that point. We'll add this as a review defect, just to have some additional information in our review. And now that we've made those changes, we'll see those highlighted, mark those defects. We'll see those highlighted here in our matrix. And we can simply click on these links and go to those defects if we wanted to. And we're also going to see those updated in our overall review defect log as well. So at this point, we are ready to send our review back to Rework, let our author pick it up, and do those changes and resubmit for a reinspection. So we'll go ahead and do that, send this to Rework. My author will get a notification that the items have come back to him for rework. We can see all that defect information. Simply click on these lines to go out and verify those. Let's do that. Select that. It brings us into that document directly to that line. We're going to see new information in the review highlighted in yellow. And depending on how your roles are set up associated with your templates, you may or may not have to mark these items as red. So we'll see those items also highlighted with the little exclamation point saying this is new information. We can simply mark these as red to go ahead and update the server with that information. Not sure what we're chewing on there, but it's got something going on. So we'll mark those as red, and we can look at these and either agree or choose to disagree. In this particular case, with this item, I don't really think that's a defect. It's something that needs to be addressed maybe in the future. We can go ahead and handle that with an edit, and we can track this externally by simply adding in that Jira project name and ticket number. Much like what we did when we created our review, we could add a different project if we wanted to. That would be simply add that link. We've already added it, but we can go ahead and add that in. And I'm not sure what we're waiting on for our updates. So with that, let's go ahead and throw my last polling question out there for the day. Are you currently using Jira for your issue tracking? And let me refresh this and see where we are. Launch that poll. We'll go ahead and step back into my review and see what's going on. This is just about finished rendering. That may be what's holding us up just a hair. Let's try that again. Ah, lovely. The joy of live demonstrations. Well, with that, we know we needed to make some changes. So let's step back out to our Azure while my server may be catching up. So we know we had some changes we need to do. We can go back to my branch that we were working on, take a look at my dev1 patch, go back into my file, and yep, there's my problem that we were seeing, missing that R. We'll go ahead and edit this guy. Make those edits. We'll call this change1, rev1, and we're going to recommit this. Now, simply by committing this right back to my current branch, because we already have a pull request open for this branch into my dev1 branch, this commit is going to automatically update my collaborator review. So when we go back and look at my pull request, the one that we're currently working on, we're going to see that there's that new commit that we just did, and that's going to update our collaborator review. And let's take a look at what that looks like. Oop. Too many servers, too many passwords. So we're back out, and when we come back in, with this refresh, we're going to see that we've indeed uploaded that new version of the file with that new commit hash. We're going to see that noted here as well with the new revision of the upload. And we're also going to see these items here that have changed, and that status has changed to indicate that we have a reworked file. Let's go ahead and step into that. Take a look at that Jira that we were talking about, the Jira issue. Select this one. We wanted to track that externally. If, for example, I didn't have a Jira issue already created that I wanted to associate with this, I could create a new one directly in Jira. I can put in any information I want to associate it with this particular defect. I can select what project I want to based on my Jira integration and what projects are available. We'll leave it with Collab for now. And we'll just call this an improvement. And when we create the issue, it's going to reach out to Jira and my Collab project, find my next available issue number, and make that assignment. Give me a hyperlink out to that particular project, and we can use this link to go take a look at that ticket. So here we'll talk a little bit about the Jira integration. It's going to take me out to Jira. We're going to see all that information that I just put in my description. There's my additional info. We're also going to have a hyperlink directly in Jira that will take us back out to our review and collaborator. So you make assignments, folks can click on this quickly and go back out and take a look at what's going on in the review. And then additionally, we have the new collaborator plugin for Jira. This is going to give you a little bit more functionality. If you want to link a particular issue to a review, maybe you don't have a previous review tied to an issue. If you want to tie an issue to a review, we can select link existing, select from our available reviews that are open on the server, and we can simply click on one of these and make that two-way assignment between Collaborator and Jira as well. It will populate that review with a link back out to Jira, as well as updating Jira here with a link to that review, much like what we're seeing here. We also get a little bit more information out of Collaborator. We're also going to see who's currently assigned on the review, what state that review is in, as well as any remote system links. So if we're working this issue and it is tied to a particular pull request out in a particular repository, whether it's GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or Azure DevOps, we're going to have those links directly out to those repositories. We can go take a look at what's going on associated with the code and this issue. So that's the Collaborator plugin. We're looking to get that set up on the Atlassian Marketplace. Currently, download information for the Collaborator plugin in Jira is available in the documentation for Collaborator. right, John, you've got a question you'd like to answer?
Yeah. And this maybe relates to the poll about issue tracking and what you're using. I think it's interesting that over half the people aren't using, or about half the people aren't using Jira. I'm kind of curious maybe what other systems people are using. But to the question about Jazz RTC and mirroring defects raised in Collaborator in other issue tracking systems outside of Jira, or the ones that we support with built-in integrations, pretty well, depending on how much you like to script, pretty easy to build an integration between the issue tracking system that you're using and Collaborator. So, and maybe I'm sure Mel will get into this if we have some time, but on the Collab server side, you have event triggers that you can set up to execute scripts, and you can build scripts that will maybe call the API to Jazz RTC, create a defect, do any linking that you need to do. So those types of integrations are relatively straightforward to make. You can also pass variables from Collaborator into those scripts. So if you have a description in your defect or custom fields in your defect, you can capture those, have them available for your script, and then include them in the issues that you create in your other system. How'd I do, Mel?
That's awesome. Actually, we're looking to put together a future webinar around that very type of thing, around some process automation, how you can use that scripting. Because like I said in my infrastructure slide, there's that whole cloud up there that is just based on your imagination and a little bit of lifting that you might want to do to tie into those systems and get that back and forth communication. So thanks, John. So we've made our changes. We've looked at our integration with Jira, and what we want to do now is just go ahead. I'm going to put a comment on this one. I'm like, no, we're not changing it. We'll add that comment. And depending on your roles, you may or may not, as an author, be able to actually mark this as fixed. My current role settings allow me to do so, but in deference to my reviewers, we'll go ahead and send this back to inspection and let them go ahead and close this review out. So back in Patrick's window, we're going to see all of the new information. Actually, let me refresh this because it still thinks we're in the rework phase. And we're going to see again those yellow items that have changed. We can come into our review, and yep, we fixed that one. So we can go ahead and mark this item as fixed. We'll see that bug change from red to green. And on line 23, go ahead and mark that as red. We'll see our bug reappear, and okay, we'll leave that as an external tracking defect. In my PDF, I can either agree to disagree, and this is where your moderator and your observer roles come in. You can bring in that third party to say, all right, this is the way it's going to be, and get some resolution to any ongoing discussion conflicts you may have. So we'll mark that one as fixed. We'll now see that we have addressed all of our defects. Our defect log is also up to date, and we can send this to completed status. Now, the way I've got my integration set up with Azure DevOps, and you have complete control over what that is going to do, I've told it to go ahead and do my merge for me. So when we come back out here and take a look at, there we go, required check succeeded, and I did my merge. So this pull request is closed. My dev1 is now updated with the changes that we just made in my dev1 patch. So again, all automated in your workflows, makes things very simple, but it also adds that peace of mind with the status checks to say, hey, I'm not dropping stuff into my repositories that hasn't been reviewed. So just to look at a couple other things, we can get a detailed report on this particular review. This is available in PDF format. Let me make sure I got that. It's generated in process. There we go. So we can get a detailed report that shows all of our defect information, time spent. We can see who completed checklists. Oh, nobody did these two. they weren't mandatory, so I guess it's all right we let those slip. You could always go back and say, hey, these need to be done. Reopen that review if you need to. We can see who participated, any remote system links that were assigned to this particular review, all of your defects, their severity, any other custom fields that you create will also be highlighted in our report, and then our entire conversation. All this information is stored in your database, so for those organizations that are regulated and need to maintain this information, it's all right here. It's all stored in the database, and as long as your database is up and healthy, you'll have access to that information. Now, as a best practice, what I've heard and that I think is a really great idea, we can actually, under a review action, grab an archive of this particular review. When we select that, it's going to come up and give me an option to download a zip file of this particular review. It's going to include all of the content cache data, so all of the versions of the files that we've uploaded, as well as a copy of PDF report. And this is taking the time that it is because I put an 18 megabyte file on here. So, but it is going to come up and ask me if I want to download this zip file here in just a moment. And it will be highlighted with the review number, so we'll have that access to the information. If you need more on your reports, our reports tab gives you options to look at a whole host of additional information. We can select the items that we want. We can filter on participants, basically anything that's in the server, from date, times, phases. We can look at any of this information. I'll just run a report real quick just to show you what it looks like. All my current reports are open. And also, as a new feature in 13, we can also export now in docx format. That was something that was not previously available. And in our more overarching reports, we have some additional formats that we can export in, as well as the SQL query we use to generate this report. So if you're looking to pull your own information out of the database, our SQL is fully published and you can grab that information. Now, John had mentioned some of the additional functionality around scripting. We'll take a look at that real quick. That occurs in our triggers. So triggers happen on certain events within the server. When you add files, change reviews, create users, change roles, any defect activity occurs, you can use these to trigger any type of script that you're comfortable with. You simply specify the executable. As John mentioned, we can specify variable parameters directly out of the Collaborator server as they're named. As you can see here, such as review creator name, or if I wanted to use review ID, I can go out and pass all that information into my executable script and then run Python, JavaScript, batch files. I've done a whole host of scripts just playing around to see what we can make happen. Incredibly powerful tool. Let's see if my, not sure why I didn't get my archive. Must still be chewing on it a little bit. But with that, that concludes our presentation of our review process today. We're right at the top of the hour. I don't see any additional questions in the Q&A, but on that note, if there are, now's the time to ask those.
Hey, Mel, would you mind just going into the user preferences to show the user mapping? There's a question about that.
Okay, sure. So user mapping can be done in two different places. The admin can take care of it. So if we're looking at users and we're having some problems mapping between Collaborator and, say, GitHub or Azure DevOps because your login names are not the same on those two systems. I'll take a look at mine, for example. And it's here under remote accounts. This is going to show all the remote accounts that are mapped into the Collaborator server. We simply need to find the one we want to look at. And in this case, here's an example for my GitLab account. GitLab is very weird in that they don't use a login name. They actually use your display name to map between GitLab and Collaborator. So I've entered these values here. And just so you know, if you're on 11, you only have the option to enter one value here. So additional aliases were added in later versions of 11 and 12. So this is fairly new functionality to be able to stack in multiple aliases for a given account. The user can take care of this themselves, so they don't have to have an admin to do this. Under your user settings, for remote accounts you have access to, you can come in and manage this on your own. So you can have your users take care of this as well. And if you're having issues, one of the biggest tools to take advantage of is taking a look at your log files. Your admins can do this through a system dump or looking directly on the server at the Collaborator logs. It will actually tell you what name it's expecting to see in Collaborator when that webhook trigger goes off. So for example, with the GitLab, it would say, can't find user Mel space Gage. So that's how I knew I had to go in and add that particular item to this field so that it knew how to find me. And the logs are very helpful for figuring out what those mappings should be. And we did touch real quick on subscriptions. I was going to show you these. They're available for individual users as well as for groups. So we could set review subscriptions based on authorship. I could assign based on if John is going to create a review, I want to be a reviewer on it and create that role. So every time John creates a review, it's automatically going to assign me. We can do that with file subscriptions as well based on a particular file pattern. This is extremely helpful for those groups that have projects, and they'll name their projects and they have particular teams that need to be associated with those project reviews. You can put in a wildcard that is your project name. I could type. And any file coming in that has that project name in it, it's going to add this person or group as reviewers. Again, template subscriptions, very similar. You simply select which template you want to use and assign those groups and people based on that template.
Hey, Mel, can I answer one thing live?
Certainly.
Actually, two things. It's just two questions. One on upgrading. So always feel free. We do have instructions in our manual on how to upgrade, but definitely something worth reaching out to our support team for, and they'll be more than happy to kind of walk you through that. And then on the Zoom recording, I'm guessing there's going to be an email that goes out when the Zoom recording is available. Millie, you know better than me. And it doesn't require Zoom to view it.
Correct. So we've touched on a whole lot of information today. We've talked about where we're going from all the way back to 10, looking at 11, 12, 13, all those new functions, new features. The upgrade process is very, very painless. It's simply a matter of downloading your server, making sure you do some backups, have some other files on hand. In the extremely off chance that something, maybe a power hit goes on while you're doing your update and you need to restore, you have those files on hand. You can easily get your production back up and running. I did a Collaborator update for a demonstration for a couple of folks over the last couple of weeks, simply because my local version of the server was not up to date. And we went through that process. It took about 10 minutes. As far as the SQL database goes, we do occasionally update our schema, and there will be some updates. Collaborator will handle those for you. You just have to simply let it know which database it's using when you do your install and upgrade process, and it's going to prompt you for that. So if there are any further questions, feel free to reach out to your account executives, your account managers, and we'll be happy to take those for you. So with that, we want to thank you for your attendance today and your participation. We really appreciate your business. We appreciate you being Collaborator customers, and we look forward to talking to you in the future. Thanks, everyone.